Hey everybody, welcome to Trading the Close. My name is Gareth Soloway, Chief Market Strategist here at VerifiedInvesting.com. All right, we have a lot to discuss even though the stock market is closed today. We do have crypto opening and wow, it has been wild. A new all-time high briefly tagged on Bitcoin before a subsequent pullback, all coinciding with the inauguration of President Trump. In addition, the S&P futures were open earlier today. They did close at 1 and they will reopen at 6 o'clock tonight, setting up for trading tomorrow. And as of now, those futures are green. So looking at a potential positive open on the S&P tomorrow morning. Commodities were open today as well. For the most part, it was pretty quiet, but we did see continued downside in oil. For those of you that have been following my short trade on oil, assuming this holds into tomorrow, we should be even deeper in the money on the short trade on oil. All right, let's get into the charts here. As we jump into the charts, this is the S&P futures daily chart, but what we want to look at is this action. This is the pre-market or this morning action here leading up into the big pop here. And look at this, guys. This is what happened here. This is the S&P futures. We had a big push right around 8 in the morning. In fact, right at 8:30, a buy program hit. And then ever since then, it has just been trickling down, again, closing at 1 p.m. Eastern time, like generally they do on holidays, again, to reopen at 6 o'clock tonight. But if we flip back to the daily chart, you can see right at the top of the screen, the S&P futures are up 21.75 points, so about 1/3 of 1%. Now, let's flip over to the S&P 500 daily chart. The S&P 500 daily, you have this parallel that we are still inside of. In fact, if we look at this low right here from about a week ago, that was the trigger of this latest rally to the upside. Now, one little thing I'm watching here, if we bring up our parallel here, we take this trend line down here, we can see again, if we drag this up, it goes right to these exact highs, high, and high right there, right? So that tells us that if we extend this out, this is a level to watch tomorrow, right around 6,045 to 46 on the S&P 500. Does that create a resistance point? Do we pull back off of that point? What's interesting, it would also be basically this high right here as well from this little uptick. So there will be resistance there. In fact, I want to show you guys this. If we really zoom in on this, look at this right here. So you see these lows right through here. If we drag this through, we can see again, right through there, this area here, we kind of pierced briefly, but then we held it. We right there, we opened, we sold off, we rallied back, we hit it, got rejected, came down, and then rally back up. This again is right there at that 6,046 to 47 level on the S&P 500. So tomorrow, that is going to be a key level. If we take that out and start trading above, you have to be in the camp that there is a possibility we could retest the 6,100 level, which was the cycle high on the S&P 500. So again, little things to watch tomorrow. Now, if we start selling off in the next few days, this upsloping trend line would be the big point of contention right here. That again has been support here from this back point from the very lows of October 2023 to this low in August of 2024. It also was the recent low right here, kind of had a dual trend line down sloping cross, which triggered again that latest bounce. So if we come down into that, this will be the key level to watch, currently sitting around 58.40, we'll call it. All right, if that breaks, then we have this secondary level right down here, and this level will be sloping down, eventually merging with this low pivot right down in this lower range. Okay, so again, a few things on the S&P 500 to watch. Now, if we flip over to a couple other key charts, I wanted to go over a few earnings that are going to be released. We have 3M reporting earnings, and this report will come out tomorrow morning. Okay, so again, tomorrow before the open, 3M is slated to report. Earnings are supposed to be $1.66 per share on $5.79 billion in revenue. The one thing, listen, when you're looking at this chart, it doesn't tell me if it's very bullish or bearish. Sometimes a chart will. Sometimes you'll be like, wow, that's a great bear flag going into earnings. Or you could say, oh, that's a great bull flag going into earnings. Like all of these different things could tell you. In the case of 3M, we're not really seeing that, right? So if we go back to the chart, the one thing I'm seeing is a potential upsloping trend line here, right? And if we look at that upsloping trend line, you can see it's a beautiful trend line that kind of kisses right here, and then right into these lows here. So that gives us a basis that if price on 3M on earnings flushes tomorrow to about 131 or so, there should be technical support. Now, on the other side of it, if we look at this as a parallel and we draw that same line in, but do it as a parallel, this actually gives us an amazing upside potential short. Now, if we look at this and we bring this down, if price on earnings surges and tags the 158-ish level, 157 level, this is a parallel right here, and that would be a sell short trading opportunity potentially. All right, so again, couple levels to watch going into earnings. Sometimes, like I said, we'll have a chart where it's like, oh, this is a bear flag. It's into resistance. There's lots of good setups here that going into earnings, we're going to be high probability that it's going to sell off, or high probability that it's going to rally to the upside. In the case of 3M, it's more a wait and see. Let's see the direction as a trader that it goes, and we can react if these key levels are tagged tomorrow, either pre-market or after hours. All right. Another stock reporting, Schwab and DHI, DR Horton reporting tomorrow morning before the bell. Schwab expected to make 90 cents here per share. If we take a look at the symbol here on Schwab, we can see, again, I have some former trend lines here, but to me, this looks like a whole lot of chop. I don't see anything that really interests me greatly in this chart overall. The only thing I would say, again, folks, just connecting the dots here, you have a trend line right up here, and then you also have a trend line right here. So there would be, like, if this rallies up into this range here around 83 to 84, that would be a significant amount of resistance right in there. And then on a sell side, the gap fill around 67.80 right here would also be a significant technical level of support. Okay, DR Horton, I'm not going to go over because I want to go to a couple other key charts. Netflix is reporting earnings tomorrow after the bell, so we are fully in earnings season this week. Last week, if you remember, it was basically the banks, but this week we are fully in earnings season. And a couple things, again, we have upsloping trend lines here, which would give us a downside support zone here. And then we also have another line here, which is essentially a parallel. There's so many parallels on these charts, and most traders and investors don't use them, but this would give us a firm level of resistance, major level of support. And again, trading up like this, you know, listen, the earnings are going to be fantastic. They had that big fight, the boxing fight between Tyson. They also have had football on. So again, there's a lot of things that are going to showcase some pretty, you know, the sporting events, some pretty good numbers from Netflix. But honestly, I think that's already priced in. Again, for me looking at this chart, I'm not going to really be able to do anything unless it gets up here. Maybe double top would be a little bit of a trade short setup. Okay, let's get into crypto here, guys. We have to look at Bitcoin. Bitcoin following the levels I gave you precisely. Look at this, guys. This is the amazing action of charts. Okay, so what did we talk about? We've been in what we call a megaphone pattern. Two lines that are diverging. Support, 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 resistance, resistance. And what did we hit today? Right there. X marks the spot right there on Bitcoin. And that has hammered Bitcoin down to about 103,000. It did make a brief new all-time high, which is not super uncommon. Why? Because think about how many stops were put right at that high. The market likes to run stops. They get all the bears out that way before they drop it back down, and they make a lot of the bulls exit and kind of freak out right there as well, and then yank it back down. So again, this is kind of the way the market works, but the charts guided us, right? This is the beauty of the charts, is that we knew, and I talked about this last week. I said, guys, this is your zone, 108, 109,000 right here is going to be your resistance level. It hits it and reverses. Beautiful movement. Now, listen, we did have Trump's inauguration, and we had honestly even bigger. I mean, at least if you're in the crypto world, the launch of the official Trump meme coin was probably the biggest event that we have seen in crypto in a long time. I could almost understand how, like, if you made a meme coin for every president, okay, I understand that. Once Melania's came out, it almost seems like a money grab, right? It's just like, okay, well, who's next? Barron Trump, you know, like Don Jr., you know, are we just going to throw these out and then just, you know, reap rewards and make billions of dollars hand over fist? So again, you know, as someone that ultimately loves Bitcoin long term, it makes me a little kind of iffy on it. You know, not Bitcoin specifically, but it just, these type of things can sometimes mark tops in markets when you get this euphoria. And let's be honest. I mean, if we go back to the charts and we take a look at the Trump coin, I mean, this was just unbelievable. The percentage gain on this and is just insane. If we look from the lows to the highs, basically a 5,000% move. It has come in a little bit, but still, I mean, literally people were made. I mean, if anyone knew about this and bought early on when it was down in this, you know, $1, $2, $3 range, I mean, literally millions of dollars potentially on a 5,000% return in literally 2 days. One day, today, and then obviously the pullback. But again, listen, this is the way it goes. This is crypto. This is exactly, what we've seen in crypto with all the meme coins. We'll see if this ultimately pans out to be something that is long lasting, or does it become a fad and eventually we see it drop to the downside. And like I said, once you start releasing these other kind of meme coins for everyone in the family, it starts to it makes it cheaper, right? The idea of a Trump coin I can get behind. I can say, okay, it's a president. Maybe the next president does one, whatever. But again, once you start bringing out other coins, it does seem more like a money grab to me. So whatever, it is what it is. Obviously, an amazing performance on Trump coin. And we'll see where it ultimately ends up. Now, for crypto, again, the biggest thing for me is Bitcoin. Watch that 108, 109 level, that high pivot. If we get above there, you have upside potentially to about 120,000 or so. But ultimately, again, until resistance is broken, you must respect resistance. All right, let's go to commodities. There were some commodities open today. So if we take a look here, if we flip over to the charts, gold inched up just a little bit today, getting a small bounce, still stuck underneath minor resistance. Remember this wedge pattern here, we broke above and we confirmed. So this now becomes major support. It could pull back there, but this would be major support. And ultimately, this is just minor resistance. Why is it minor resistance? Because it's only a short-term trend line, right? The longer term trend lines carry more weight. This is just connecting two highs that were between, basically 2 weeks in between, essentially. This, again, would only be minor resistance. So minor resistance, you can chop along, pull back a little bit, but eventually the idea is you break through them, versus major levels can be much longer and deeper pullbacks on gold. All right, upside resistance will be double top if we push through there. Silver today, let's take a look quickly at silver. Silver, again, fractionally higher on the day, just above this wedge pattern. Again, technically, this closed above and did confirm, so it makes sense why it's been holding this. But the more it hammers, the weaker this becomes. So we got to really watch this. As I discussed with you guys previously, the silver move has been much more suspect, in my opinion, weaker, if you will, in terms of the technical signals. Yes, it still confirmed the breakout, but it's already hammering on the backside. And if we just go back and kind of compare that to gold, gold's backside is all the way down here, right? This is the backside trend line here. So gold hasn't even come close. So therefore, you see the relative strength in gold versus silver, which is already hammering on that downside doorway and weakening that doorway just a little bit. All right, if we go to oil, as I mentioned, guys, you guys know I'm short on this. Again, beautiful sell-off on oil. Downside support is going to be right in here. If we look at this chart, you can see, again, this is a trend line that goes way far back to the highs, basically in 2022. I believe that was when Russia invaded Ukraine. And again, we've now broken above that. The retrace for me to take some off the table would be right down here around $74 a barrel. We then could get a little bit of a bounce, and then we have to see, does it go back to the highs or does it break eventually to the downside? A lot of that is going to be determined by what we see from the Chinese economy, as well as what we see from the U.S. economy in terms of economic data, and maybe earnings as well. Earnings can guide towards economic action as well. All right. Natural gas today. Let's take a look at nat gas here. If we bring that up, and if I can type it in correctly here, we can take a look. There we go. Nat gas down again today. So again, it's really just been stuck between these two lines, resistance, resistance, and resistance, each time getting a pullback. And here we went up and we didn't even get to resistance, which could be an indicator that we could be getting close to a breakdown of this trend line. There's no trade for me, no high probability setup, but it is something just to keep an eye on, that this line has been hit many times, and upsloping trend lines or channels, the more you hit on them, eventually they break to the downside about 80% of the time. So probability eventually signals a potential breakdown on this setup. Okay, couple other things to go over. I'm very curious to see how the Chinese stocks behave after a big player from the Chinese government attended the inauguration. Trump has given a 30 or 90-day stay on banning of TikTok and all of these things. Again, if we look at BABA, let's keep an eye on these. These I talked to you guys about on Friday morning in the game plan, and they had great days on Friday. Alibaba up over 3%. Doesn't seem like, if you're trading Rigetti, doesn't seem like that big, but for Alibaba, that was a nice move to the upside. But I just love this chart, guys. Down sloping trend line, hits, bounces, hits, bounces, hits, bounces. And then you have additional support right down here. And in the near term, if we look at Baidu as well, which is another big China play, you can see, look at that. Hit, bounce, and look at that bounce on Friday. So let's see how these things react tomorrow when the stock market opens. Again, it's a short week because the stock market was closed today. but ultimately it will not be void of action. Let's see what executive orders come out, what the outlook is economically based on these executive orders and kind of the game plan from the president. And then let's also focus in on what we're seeing in terms of tariffs. Are there going to be tariffs announced this week? As of now, there's been nothing. And I actually read something that maybe they're going to be just pushed out a little bit, but let's watch and see. This is fascinating. And ultimately, again, should yield opportunities for us as traders. You guys know I'm here for you. Verified Investing is here for you. Data and charts. That's all that we care about. Take the mind, the heart out of it, the emotion, get it out of here. It's not going to help you make money. What we want to do is we want to study the probabilities via the charts. We can look at every chart pattern there is and say, okay, when you see this, there's a 70 or 80 or 85 or 60% chance of this move occurring. When it's upwards of 75, 80, that's where I get interested in terms of a trade. And if we do that, again, we become the casino essentially. Yeah, sure, we're going to have losses. I certainly have a few losses here and there. And I've had many, many over the course of my trading career. Have I won more than I've lost? Heck yeah, because I learned to follow the charts, shut off my emotions, and utilize probability. All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning in, guys. You guys are the best. I appreciate your support 100 times over. Seriously, I do what I do because you guys support me and you support Verified Investing. So thank you so much. Have a good one. Take care.